And welcome to the Gay Liberation Network here on CAN TV. I'm your host, Andy Thayer, and with me here tonight is Jorge Lejica Marias from Arise, Chicago. For those of you who don't know Jorge, he has been for several years now one of the principal immigrant rights leaders here in the city of Chicago. Back in 2006, when the notorious Sensenbrenner bill was probably, up to that point in modern history at least, the most devastating attack on immigrants, led by a Wisconsin Congressman, Sensenbrenner. Jorge initiated what became the largest march that the city of Chicago has ever seen. I believe it was 2 million
Historically,
people.
no, I mean
1 million, whatever.
1 million.
1 million. I've heard both figures. I think we can safely say 2 million. I think we can also safely say it was much bigger than the Cubs' victory parade.
Oh yes.
Despite what the city fathers tried to peddle and the Chicago Tribune later had to retract. But we have had a whole new series of attacks, not just under the current administration, but on the Obama administration. Actually, a record number of deportations under President Obama, far more than any previous president. And now
far more than all presidents combined, actually.
Really? Okay. Yes. And so for those who just want to say, oh, let's get back to the good old days of Obama. Sorry, not good enough.
No.
Well, it's important to say the Obama years, whatever your evaluation of them is, they paved the way for where we are right now.
Definitely. The whole infrastructure for deportation that Trump now threatens us to use was built during the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, Jorge, could you tell people, I know that there's been yet another executive order out there attacking immigrants. The Trump administration seems to pretend that this one's going to pass constitutional muster, unlike the first one. Could you tell people what the specific provisions of this new order are, and what are the threats that are coming down right now?
Well, it's the Muslim ban 2.0. Mm-hmm. The first one banned people from 7 countries indiscriminately to come to the United States. And it didn't resist any challenge in court. There were 4 or 5 challenges, because basically people who were legal permanent residents of the United States were banned to come back. People who were just tourists, were banned to come in. People who had requested asylum visas and they had already been screened and given their visas were not allowed to come in. So it was, a completely absurd ban. So 2.0 version, it eliminates one of the countries that originally had been
Iraq,
in the ban, Iraq, but it still bans people from the other 6. It delays the application until the 15th. So for 4 more days, is not being applied.
Right.
And already it's been challenged. The state of Hawaii, not a single individual, not the ACLU, who was the one challenging the first version, but the state of Hawaii is already challenging this second version of the executive order. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think it's also going to be frozen in court.
Well, I think we can't be complacent, though.
Oh no.
Because, and I think this is, I'd like to come back to this in a few minutes, but before we go into that topic, I'd like to introduce our viewers to a few very important activities coming up later this month. Yeah, isn't that
ugly guy?
Isn't that frightening? Yeah, that's of course Speaker Paul Ryan, and this is what this is all about. Yes, the Republicans are coming to Chicago, our fair city. They're having a big fundraiser, according to Crane's Chicago magazine, and we're going to be out there along with a host of others, people protesting the tax on health care. Whatever you say about the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, what they are proposing would eliminate health insurance coverage for 20 million more people.
20 million, yeah.
And it probably, as feeble as Obamacare is right now, the finances of this new plan would basically wreck the entire plan probably within a decade or so. And so we'd be back to the old situation of solely private insurance.
Absolutely, and higher costs for the workers who will have to pay, higher fees and whatever.
Right now, you can charge older people up to 3 times what you charge younger people, and the new would be up to 5 times, which is ironic given Trump's voter base. So that's coming up on Thursday, the 23rd. Also coming up, and this is something that Jorge has been very involved with here, and that's May Day. Tell people a bit about May Day, what's going to be going on with that.
Well, it's got many names. So obviously, the most important one is International Workers' Day. But depending on the community you work with, it's also known as Immigrants' Day. And for this particular year, it's been called a day without immigrants. We call it a day without everybody. A day without immigrants, workers, men, women. It doesn't matter. Because everybody coincides that we have to respond, and we have to respond very heavily. What we are doing is calling for a day of, under any other name, strike. Don't go to work, don't go to school, and don't shop by any means.
Or if you go to school, lead a walkout at your local school.
Of course, just go to school, organize your students, and come out.
And what's really exciting now is the Chicago Teachers Union
is talking about
taking a strike day's action because, of course, the attacks on public education here in Chicago and Illinois.
The pensions
they refuse to, they've cut back the school year. They've had these furlough days. This in a school system where just a few years ago, Rahm was touting how he's extending the school day and so with, of course, giving no more resources for whether teachers' aid or special ed or what have you. So it is pretty outrageous.
Of course, so definitely if the teachers come out on a strike for one day, that's going to have the effect of I don't know how many, 435,000 students without school that day. So we hope that everybody joins the march. We're going to start at 1 p.m. at Union Park.
And we'll get that graphic up a little bit later in the program. But before we go any further, I would like to also give a shout out for Jorge's organization, which is Arise Chicago. Say a few words about what Arise is all about, Jorge.
Arise is a worker center, nonprofit, interfaith, and we support workers' struggles. If people have problems in the workplace, we educate them a little bit on what their rights are, and then alongside with them, we take action to try to solve those problems. Sometimes it's just stolen wages, a few $1,000s an employer hasn't paid. Sometimes it's to organize into a labor union.
A few $1,000s for most of us is a lot of money, though. So
I know, absolutely.
Nothing to a lot of these employers. I wanted to get back, though, to this whole issue of what's called Muslim ban 2.0, because I think it's really important to point out that there have been many times in U.S. history when blatantly unconstitutional, racist nonsense has just sailed through the courts and said, this is just fine and dandy. The legislator said it's fine and dandy. We're right about on the 75th anniversary of the mass imprisonment of the Japanese Americans. Back in the late 19th century, we had the Chinese Exclusion Act. We had the mass deportation, forced deportation of Latinos from Detroit, which used to have a huge Mexican-American population. You wouldn't think of it today.
I know.
But that was because of the purges of people. Not unlike some of the racist purges that have been carried out through the years against African Americans in various communities, where whole vibrant communities are wiped out. So that sort of nonsense has been shown constitutional, quote unquote, even though it violated the letter of the law. And so the important thing, I think, here is that people mobilized. The moment they heard that people were being hassled at the airports, people flooded out to the airports. And I think that's
Precisely, and I think that's, we keep insisting that the power is on the streets. The power is not really in Washington. They exercise the power they have, and when we go out to the streets, we exercise the power we have. I don't think the courts would have ruled so seriously against Donald Trump if the people had not taken over the airports. There were over 20 airports taken.
This is
by
O'Hare's Terminal 5.
Right, at O'Hare, the international terminal, receiving people who were coming from these countries, And it's a complicated thing because when you are at an international airport, legally speaking, you are at a border.
That's right.
So the Border Patrol has the right of not allowing you to come in, and you don't have the right to legal counsel.
Right.
Unless there's the legal counsel right there, like in the next room.
Big
so
shout
those
out
are
to National Lawyers Guild
absolutely,
and ACLU and others
and
who
the
did
ACLU,
that.
that's right, and that's what we have to do. That's the kind of preparedness we have to fall into. Be ready for this kind of actions. There are a lot of rumors that immigration is doing raids and sweeps in the Latino community.
Right.
None of that is true. The
Right.
threat is there, but as you were saying at the beginning, during the Obama years, we saw 3 million people deported.
Right.
So Trump is threatening us with doing what Obama already did.
Well, and I think it's important because people have pointed to bag checks on the CTA and other things like that, and said
Right.
raids are happening at the SNL stop
right.
and so forth. And
Yeah.
it's like, let's not do the other side's job for them by unnecessarily spreading fear. If you have
Right.
information about something going on, A, ask the source of it. B,
Verify.
take a short video of it.
Exactly.
Take a picture. Most people have got phones of one sort or another that they can do this stuff. But if we're spreading false rumors, then we're traumatizing people that are worried about losing their parents or the kids.
And they are contributing to the psychological war against the immigrant community.
Yes.
And as we say, fear paralyzes, good information organizes.
Right.
I mean, don't run any information that you are not sure if it's true and correct.
Oh, and as we saw in some of those pictures there, a lot of people have come out. And one of the problems with fear is that frightens people into not showing up and standing up for their civil rights. And yeah, obviously it's much more difficult for someone who's black or Latino than someone with this showing up at a demonstration or, if necessary, facing down cops or
meetings and workshops
No.
to get ready, prepare, educate yourself on your rights, how to exercise them. If immigration shows up at your workplace or at home, people don't even come to those meetings, to those workshops, because they are afraid of immigration. So we get into a vicious circle, and that paralyzes us and that debilitates us.
And there's already been reports of people afraid to send their kids to school. I mean, there was
Yes.
the infamous incident. I think it was out in the Pacific Northwest where a dad was picking up his daughter.
Right, or dropping her off.
The ICE people, I gather it was, literally took him away from his daughter, and she was crying, and there was a cell phone video that went viral
Yes.
about it. So it's not to say that the danger isn't there, but we should not be doing the other side's job for them by unnecessarily spreading rumors that are unverified. Always ask the source. Someone tells you, hey, this happened. It's like, what's your source?
Yeah, exactly.
First question, what's your source?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
to get accusatory,
Yeah.
but what's your source? Because let's drill down and find what it is. Let's not be in the situation of producing fake news.
Fake reality. I mean, always remember that, if we contribute to the fear, it's to damage our own community. So don't do that. And also, don't put the 100% of the attention to the very isolated cases. I mean, there are 1,000 deportations every week in the United States. That's routine. The tensions in the border actually went down during the month of February. So no, immigration is not like Gestapo style out in the streets grabbing people up in the corners. They are not doing that. The threat is there, yes,
and that's
but
the point
it's not
of
happening so
mobilizing.
far.
And I've brought up this analogy before, but I think it's absolutely correct. We in the LGBT community were initially facing a rescission of the ban on discrimination in federal employment,
Right,
as well as
correct.
federal contractors against LGBT people, and we directly benefited as LGBT people by the many Muslims, immigrants, and
yes.
people stood up for them coming out into the streets before us. Because by the time the Trump administration was contemplating going against those federal employment protections, other people had already mobilized. And I think they decided, well, for the time being, let's lay off the LGBTs. Now, of course, they came back with the changed language on the Justice Department's recommendations in terms of transgender students. But as bad as it is, it could have been much worse. And we have to thank all those thousands of people, those folks who showed up at O'Hare and elsewhere for basically helping us as LGBTs regardless of what our backgrounds are.
Absolutely, and helping us immigrants, because also there's the other executive order by Donald Trump, which basically does away with two things: the right of privacy and the right to get a due process. What the executive order says is any immigrant can be deported without the right to counsel, without being sentenced to anything, just by being accused of a crime. So if anybody accuses you of committing a crime and you are not a U.S. citizen, according to Donald Trump, you can be deported
So much
immediately.
for due process. And
So
the
much for due
Constitution never
process.
said due
Forget it.
process except
It's-
for people who are undocumented.
It doesn't say.
it
The
doesn't
law of
say
the
that.
land is the land, not the citizen only.
I would just like to point out that the telephone number, if you want to quickly get into the
yes.
conversation, we don't have lots of time for calls, but we can take some brief calls if you want to call that number at the bottom of your screen. I'd like to call up on our screen, though, now some pictures of some of the responses to Trump's attacks on immigrants, and going back to especially the day without immigrants. And I'm going to flip through these. This is Ashland Avenue. This is a march that Arise Chicago with our own Jorge Mejica Marias initiated, and you can see many thousands of people came out for this. It was an impressive turnout on a work day. A lot of people took off work. Businesses were forced to close. This was on Thursday in February.
The 16th, correct.
The 16th, thank you. This sign here, just really, really poignant. And it's also something about, you look at the countries in the world where there's problems with, this is taken from Whitney Young High School.
Right.
A young Whitney Young High School, a.k.a. me, snuck up there.
Went back to your
shout out,
matter, bro.
Yeah, right. Shout out to all the good people at Whitney Young High School who tolerated me while I filmed this. And there's, that guy. I gotta watch out. He's pretty dangerous, I've been told. We have a situation here where I think things are sort of at a tipping point, because they could either go forward or they could go backwards. And certainly some of those who gave us the backwards in terms of the attacks on immigrants in the past decade are trying to claw back their credibility. They're saying, oh, look at how bad Trump is. And oh my God, he really is quite bad, isn't he?
Of course.
We're not Trump, and therefore we're better, and we're some kind of alternative. I mean, the Democrats, the attacks on working class living standards, the fact that we have got a lower life expectancy rate for the first time in a few decades, certainly lower real incomes for folks. 20-something starting out today are making, on average, 20% less than you or I when we started out way back in the last century. And so these attacks are a real, unfortunately, people, they rejected the devil that they knew, which was the Democrats and Hillary Clinton, and they took the devil they didn't.
Yeah.
And actually, 40+% of people didn't vote that were eligible, compared to the 25% each who voted for the two major candidates.
That's right, and that's, in detriment of the Democrats. I mean, they played games, for instance, with the immigrant community, saying we will not accept any kind of immigration reform that does not include pretty much automatic citizenship, meaning the path to citizenship. And that was again because they knew the Republicans were never ever going to accept that immigrants became citizens, because 80% of immigrants who become citizens vote for the Democratic Party.
Right.
So it was like going to the Republican Party saying, hey, give me 8 more million votes, will you? And
Well,
of
they
course,
had both houses of Congress in the first
They did.
couple of years.
That's
of
the way they passed Obamacare,
But then, you know, DACA, they did DACA because it's all dependent on executive orders. So they can
Right.
say it's like, if you don't elect our party,
Right,
that's going to go
exactly,
away.
it's going to
And
go,
so
right.
it was a very cynical move. And
Absolutely.
I think for all the protestations about being a friend of immigrants, our own Rahm Emanuel in the Clinton administration, this came out just a few months ago, in the Clinton administration, Rahm Emanuel is a high-level staffer,
Yeah.
not only pushed NAFTA, that part was publicly known, but he also said, let's push for a heightened and a record level of deportation of immigrants to show how tough we are on immigration.
On
And now-
crime.
On crime.
And automatically claiming that immigrants were criminals.
No, well, it's the same time, of
Basically.
course, we got the
Yeah.
1996 crime bill,
Yeah.
which led to the second wave of mass incarceration in the post
Right. And that's the situation you were talking about a little bit before. You know, it's like a friend of mine says, we have a knife, 3 inches into our ribs, and the Democrats pull 1 inch, and we are a lot
We're better.
Oh yeah, we are a lot better.
There was
Now
actually an
Trump
old
is
Malcolm
pushing it
X
back
quote.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jorge, in all seriousness, it's not enough to say the Republicans obviously reek, and for that matter, the Democrats as well in the main, or all of them, if you're of certain political varieties. It's not enough to say someone is bad. The questions we have to talk about, solutions as well.
That's right, and that's something we have been pushing in the immigrant community, not only to say stop deportations, which always, we have to stop them, of course, but what is the solution? Stopping deportations only is not a solution. The United States still has a big problem, and it's not immigrants. The problem is that the United States doesn't give visas to immigrants who come to work. The United States has a preferential system of visas for relatives. You have to be the relative of a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident in order to immigrate legally. But that's not the kind of visa we need. I don't need a brother visa. What I need is a working visa.
Right,
And that's what the United States does not have.
Well,
It's limited to 100,000 working visas a year, and that's it. And 80% of them go to diplomats and to high-tech professions. So if you want to come here to wash dishes, there's no visa for you, period.
Right,
That's
right.
it.
Well, and what for all the talk about making America great again, the history of countries around the world is that those who have dramatically aging populations, and the United States is among them, are the economies that lose out. And take an extreme example, Japan, which has got virtually no immigration, they have been stuck in basically zero growth for a few decades now, despite a whole variety of different plans that they have tried. And there's other versions of Japan out there. Europe is a lesser version. Time and time again, it's shown that immigrants and first generation sons and daughters of immigrants are totally vital to boosting an
The Pew
economy.
Institute just came up 2 days ago with an incredible report on that. Without immigrants and the sons and daughters of immigrants, the United States working population will go down to 163 million people by the year 2035. So that means, forget about recession, forget about crisis. I mean, going 20 millions down in our working population, that means Social Security, completely doesn't work. Nothing works.
Well, and as long as we're talking about that and this attack on social programs, which I think it's so important for us to address, is that as long as we're spending as much on our military as practically the rest of the world combined, and under the 10% increase that's talked about, God knows how they're going to pay for it, except for really screwing us.
Yes.
That's money that could be going for jobs. That's money that could be going to schools of the quality that Ram enjoyed when he was growing up, going to New Trier High School. I mean, every kid should have that, particularly kids who are much more disadvantaged than Ram.
And not only at the federal level. I mean, the city of Chicago, 48% of the budget goes to the police department.
Right.
Which is, another no.
And we've got the third highest per capita cop per civilian ratio of any city in the United States, beaten out just by Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So we've got a number of huge problems here. I'm afraid, though, we're going to have to save those problems as well as the solutions for...
Because we have a time problem.
We've got a time problem here, The CAN TV folks will only let us on so long, so I'd like to just finish with a few important announcements here. First of all, God, yeah, that's horrible. This guy's coming to Chicago, and he's coming to Chicago along with a bunch of his Republican pals for a big fundraiser, not at Trump Tower, but at 81 East Van Buren. There's some fancy club there, 5 p.m. on Thursday, March 23rd. Please make your way out there. There will be all sorts of people on a wide variety of issues wanting to give what for to these damned Republicans and their hangers-on. And then coming up, of course, on May Day, Jorge and any number of folks are mobilizing for May Day this year. Stay away from work, walk out from your schools. Join us on Monday, May 1st, 1 p.m., Union Park. That's Ashland and Randolph on the near west side of Chicago. And, of course, Jorge's organization, Arise Chicago. You should really check that out, arisechicago.org.
And also in Facebook, of course.
Yes. So check out them. And finally, I'd just like to say a big shout out to all those who helped us on tonight's program.